growing up, I always had it in my head that temptation in itself was a sin. And that would always be so discouraging for me because before I would even perform this act of sin, I was already feeling guilty. And in a lot of ways, in my head, I was like, well, I already feel guilty for something I haven't even done. I might as well do it. And I know that's a horrible mindset. It doesn't even make a lot of sense, but I was, young in high school, before high school too. And I don't know if this was the way I interpreted scripture, or if this was how I was unintentionally taught growing up, or if it was a mix of both. But this was always what I thought. This was how I lived life for many years, thinking that temptation itself was a sin. And I would get, again, very discouraged because I'm a Christian, I'm following Jesus, and I'm still getting tempted. And in my head, I'm still sinning before I even sin. And I would get lost a lot of times, confused, because it was never directly taught that it wasn't a sin. And it took me reading this passage of scripture in Matthew chapter 4 many times over to realize that temptation in itself is not a sin. And I brought that up to people, and they look at me really confused. And I say, well, Jesus was tempted. How do you explain temptation being sin if the only man who ever lived a sinless life, and we read that in scripture, was tempted? Temptation in itself is not a sin. And we know that, and we can be sure of that because Jesus himself was tempted. In Matthew chapter 4, we read, "And after 40 days of 40 nights of fasting, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said, 'If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread.'" The first thing that sticks out to me here is Satan tempts him with the one thing that Jesus really needs in that moment in time. Jesus just spent 40 days and 40 nights tempting, and scripture says Jesus was hungry. And the first thing Satan throws at him is, if you're God, turn these rocks into bread. If you're so hungry, show me that you are God and turn these rocks into bread. And that happens so often in life with a lot of us. For me in high school, Satan would always throw the things that I wanted the most at me. In high school, it was sexual temptation. It was sexual sin. That was something I desired so badly in high school. And that was the result of a lot of different things. But I wanted that so badly, so Satan would throw that at me. He'd be like, hey, here's this girl. Here's this website. If you want it so badly, take it. And so often in my walk in high school, I would. Because that's what I wanted so badly, and it was offered so easily to me. It was right there. It was available, so I took it. And it always fulfilled that desire for a moment of time. But it's only ever that when it's offered by Satan. It's a moment in time. But one thing that is so incredible about Jesus' response is it's not just, I don't need to prove anything to you. It's scripture. Jesus throws scripture in the face of Satan. He says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. But the devil doesn't give up. He tries again. And what's so interesting about this second attempt is Satan then throws scripture at Jesus. It says in verse 5, then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Satan threw scripture at Jesus. Satan knows scripture. If Satan knows scripture, don't you think we should know scripture? There's another passage in the Bible talking about Christians who simply say that they believe. I believe in Jesus, I'm good. I believe in God, I'll get into heaven. But the response is great. Even the demons believe. And they believe and they shudder. You simply believe. You don't have any fear of God. They believe and they shudder. But again, Jesus throws more scripture at him. Jesus said to him, again it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. But still, this does not deter the enemy. He's like, I'll give it one more shot. Surely, if I offer him something grander of scale, it'll trick him. We see again his third attempt. It says again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these I will give to you if you fall down and worship me. See, the thing that's interesting about this one is that was not Satan's to give. He doesn't have control over these kingdoms. He does not own these kingdoms. He did not create these kingdoms. So he was not in the position to even offer these to Jesus. But he wanted Jesus to believe that he could do that. He was lying to him. And so often, Satan will try to offer us things that he cannot provide. He offers us peace. And the things of this world, he's like, these things will give you peace. But he can never deliver on that promise because he is not the author of peace. God is the author of peace. He often offers love and comfort and joy, but he cannot give you these things because he is only the father of lies. He's the father of lies. That's the only attack Satan has against you, is lies. But he throws these in your face in hopes that you'll believe him. He doesn't know. He doesn't know your tomorrow, but he wants you to believe that he does. So he can keep you in your bubble, keep you in your little room in your head, so you can't follow the promises of God. You can't follow the will of God because he's got you stuck in these lies of things that he doesn't even know. So often, or no, even for so much of my life, this is what Satan threw at me. He would always tell me that I would never be loved. After many breakups, I was in this mindset of I'll never be loved. No one will ever love me. And he fed into that and said, you're right. No one will ever love you. But he couldn't see my future. But he wanted me to believe that he did. And for so long, I did believe him. I was like, you're right. No one ever will love me. I've tried over and over, and I failed every single time. No one's ever going to love me. But he had no idea what my future was going to look like. He has no idea what God has planned for me, but he convinced me that he did know. He convinced me that he had that same omnipotence that God does, that ever-present power that God does when he doesn't. He couldn't offer me those things. He couldn't see my future, but still he convinced me, lied to me, and convinced me that he did. But again, Jesus' response is just, be gone, Satan. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him.